back to LSTV. I am Lance Sissany. Thank you for coming back. This morning I was watching an interview of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. hosted by the comedian Russell Brand on his Rumble channel. And in a refreshing dissent from what we normally consider the politics of today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was able to articulate his message very clearly on the questions asked concerning the role of government in our lives and the stance on the medical intervention necessary to live a normal life. No, that's just the way that I looked at it in a way. But it would do me good if you would watch this interview yourself, because he goes into a lot of detail. I cannot orate on it anywhere near as succinctly as he can, but this was on the link you'll find below in the description of the comments, and it was very informative. And I think the takeaway that I had from it was I was actually just relieved to see what would be considered opposing viewpoints kind of being together on the same issue, especially when it comes to corporations financing our elections and those who are, really receiving the benefit of this great American experiment that we are celebrating the independence of today. In another video here, this Twitter poster is Nina Turner. She posted a video of Jon Stewart asking our, I believe, Secretary of Treasury Yellen a very important question about the benefits that this economy does have, and you would consider Jon Stewart on the opposite side of the spectrum from, say, Russell Brand or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's just hear the piece. Jon Stewart, please.
Benefits of American corporate America gets all the benefits of American stability and fiscal policy, but bears none of the responsibility. Walmart, they make billions in profits. Their workers are one of the largest corporate users of social service programs. Why don't Walmart workers share in the profits of Walmart?
In a capitalist system, companies have a right to distribute profits to their shareholders.
Mm-hmm. This is the insidious part, I think, of when we talk about that we have a free market system. Because what it makes it seem like is that the natural order of things is that Walmart makes billions in profits and can distribute it to its shareholders, and that's just how it goes. But we know that we, the taxpayers, are subsidizing their workforce with food stamps. They're getting the benefit of our tax dollars. Corporate America gets all.
I believe he asked a very fair question there, and a lot of people would like to know where the protection is for the worker and the consumer in many instances for their businesses to take profit over the betterment of the communities that they serve, and what responsibility do they have to those communities? Well, I would say as a moralistic sense, quite a bit, and as a smart business sense, you would think you would want your customers to be able to come back and buy products again, because repeat business is where the money's at these days. But what I mean by people who are on opposing sides of the argument kind of coming together on this one key issue, we have another person here who's very controversial in when he speaks, who agrees with him, and when he takes a position, if you're allowed to agree with position on him, he's believe either ex or enlisted U.S. military, Col Douglas MacGregor, and this is what he has to say about the way that our democracy is handling the economy.
So the world has changed, but we did not. We decided, well, we're going to run this place, and we're going to structure the financial system, the global financial system, to suit us. We're going to use it to force people to do the things we want them to do. And we're doing it all in the name of this crusading liberal democratic approach. In other words, we're crusaders for liberal democracy. Well, that doesn't hold up to close scrutiny. I mean, let's face it, that's a lot of nonsense. Behind the scenes, you have all of these people invested in personally and in terms of their wealth invested in this global structure We call it security, and the rest of the world looks at it as potentially dangerous American military presence. I don't know that Americans realize that this hangover from the Cold War is primarily responsible for it. But if you have lots of money going into weapon systems, into programs, into policies, into foreign aid that have been going there and going there and going there and going there, you have lots of people on the Hill, and you have lots of donors who control the Hill that profit from that. They don't want that to stop. And that was Trump's great sin, if you will, in Washington. He's disrupting the money flow. If Trump gets away with this, we're going to go broke. We'll lose money. That was the reason Trump was hated, despised, and successfully subverted, I would add. But we still have to do it. We still have to stop it. And we're up against a group of people in Washington who want to keep it going.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They would love to keep it going. And what is there really to stop them at this point? I mean, the options for the common person to stand up and say, hey, you are taking way more for yourself than any one person should consider reasonable, and naming your future security on it. Well, none of us are guaranteed a future, especially at this rate with the way things are going. So, I mean, it looks more and more every day that the people who have the power, the people who control those knobs of the economy, they don't care about their people. They don't care about their customers. They have every mechanism that in place that they need to protect their fortunes, and to the hell with the rest of us unless you're in on their system. I don't think most of us really would even want to be. Most of us think we'd love to be rich, but I think if you really thought what it took to be rich and to maintain wealth and to have that sort of family structure, I don't know if many of us would have the conscience for it. But we have another individual here, Mr. Max Blumenthal. I believe he was either a current or a former representative. Possibly, I have to look up his background, but if you look for the tweet, I have all these in the comments below. You can research on him yourself, but I know he's somebody in the at least the media these days. But you know, he's having I think a hearing or a meeting at the Council for Foreign Relations, I think, or the International Council for Foreign Relations. It's something somewhat insidious, but let's hear what he has to say, because I think he makes a good point here on the real winners of what's going on overseas right now. Again, links in the comment. You can follow all this yourself.
To fight this war down to the last Ukrainian. While official casualty numbers are strictly classified, we must worry that Ukraine is well on its way to fulfilling the senator's ghoulish fantasies. As a Ukrainian soldier complained this month to Vice News, we don't know what Zelensky's plans are, but, quote, it looks like the extermination of its own population, like of the combat-ready and working-age population. That's it. Indeed, military cemeteries in Ukraine are expanding almost as rapidly as the Northern Virginia McMansions and beachfront estates of executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and assorted Beltway contractors benefiting from the second highest level of military spending since World War II. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war, not average Ukrainians or Americans or Russians. The winners, or Europeans for that matter, the winners are people like Secretary of State Tony Blinken, who spent his time between the Obama and Biden administrations launching a consulting firm called West Exec Advisors, which secured lucrative government contracts for intelligence firms and the arms industry. Blinken's former partners at West Exec include Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines, CIA Deputy Director David Cohen, former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, and almost a dozen current and former members of Biden's national security team. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, for his former and possibly future board member of Raytheon, and an ex-partner of Pine Island Capital Investment, which collaborates with West Exec and which Blinken himself has advised. Meanwhile, the current U.S. ambassador to this body, the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, is listed as a senior counsel at the Albright Stonebridge Group, a self-described commercial diplomacy firm that also finesses government contracts for the intelligence and arms sector, and which was founded by Madeleine Albright, infamously known for her comments that the deaths by sanctions of 500,000 Iraqi children were worth it. So while military-age Ukrainian men are ripped off the streets by military police and sent to the front lines, the financially and politically connected architects of this proxy war are planning to walk through the revolving door to reap unimaginable profits once their time in the Biden administration is over. For them, a negotiated settlement to this territorial dispute means an end to the cash cow of close to $150 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine. So in closing, when the United States, my country, a permanent member of this council, has fallen under the control of a bipartisan regime which seeks to perpetuate a proxy war for as long as it takes, in the words of Joe Biden, which considers diplomacy synonymous with unilateral coercive measures to, quote, turn the ruble to rubble, as Biden pledged to do, whose leadership subverts negotiations in order to pursue profit while refusing to properly inform its own citizens what they're paying for, and pushes the sons and brothers of its supposed Ukrainian partners out onto a killing field in order to bludgeon a geopolitical rival, when both Zelensky and members of U.S. Congress are calling for preemptive strikes on Russia, which have nothing to do with Article 51 of the UN Charter, this Council must take action to enforce that charter. That charter is clear that the Security Council must use its authority to guarantee a pacific settlement of dispute, particularly when it threatens international security. That should not only apply to Russia and Ukraine. This Council has an obligation to strictly monitor and restrain the U.S. and the illegal military formation known as NATO. Thank you.
He's got a point. He's got a point. Things are getting a little out of hand these days. People forgot what we're supposed to be over there doing. Making too much money at it. Everybody's got their hands in the cookie jar these days. Nobody thinks about, well, why should I care about someone else? Same thing about people breaking into people's houses and not having to pay for it. Oh, well, how else is he going to get his clothes and he's going to get his shoes? Everybody's operating that same mentality. Both sides, they're both robbing from us, all of them. And they're getting rich and they're laughing in your face and they're taking away your power to do about it more and more every day. So, yeah, don't be surprised when people get mad enough and don't have a vehicle or a way to enact their anger or a way to air their grievances, that you've taken all those ways from the people. Don't think that censorship is just a joke that they perpetuate on you. No, they're trying to censor you from knowing anything about what they're doing, and they've been doing that for a very long time. Recently came across this little clip I'm going to share with you. It's a little bit longer, but hang in there. I think there's some good stuff in here. I think you're going to like it.
And just because you didn't know what you're doing, that's no excuse. It doesn't exonerate you from liability. There was a bankruptcy in 1933, and the central bankers came in and said, we have a mechanism whereby you can continue to conduct commerce even though you're bankrupt and there's no money. Pledge your citizens as collateral. That happened in 1933, the bankruptcy. And that, by no coincidence, is why these started to be issued in 1933. So you may be walking around thinking you're free and you have rights. But the bottom line is that you are owned, you're a chattel, you're a slave. And these people own you. And that's why they can do things to you against your will. Because you comply.
Right now I'm going to just read a quote from Edward Mendell House and what he had to say in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson, president between 1913 and 1921, from the private papers of Woodrow Wilson. Quote, very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivered the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given commercial value designated to keep us a profit that will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans. And if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and pledges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest of expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the President as our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. Having established plausible deniability, even if people become enlightened that they had a remedy and pursued it, the attorneys, judges, and legislators could claim that they did not understand the people's claims, especially if the technical requirements for achieving it were not followed pursuant to statutory requirements. Requiring the public schools to teach civics, government, and history classes out of federally approved, politically correct textbooks written by the publishing houses owned by the owners of the Federal Reserve would assure that the people would not discover the remedy for a long time, if ever.
I mean, sometimes you don't want to know some things, but, when you find out, you can't unknow them. And I think that's where we're at, I think we're, the shade's getting pulled back, the curtain's getting pulled back, the light's exposing the infestation, we've got a problem, big money in politics. That was the main message that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had with Russell Brand earlier, is, keeping or at least that was a question that Russell Brand, posed to Mr. Kennedy, is how to keep the corporate money out of politics, because that is really what is controlling our elections and our, world in some certain ways. But I think we had to dig back in the past, and somebody posted this clip, and this came directly from our president back when he was only a senator. But I think this is good advice from Mr. Biden from back then. I think we should listen to it now,
Thank you for that, though. Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that, though. Well,
I'm not sure you should assume that I'm not corrupt. But thank you for that. Yeah, it's hard to, hold a straight face when you really want to say it out loud, but that's all right. He's a pretty slick talker back then, he's been the whole time, so I guess it's no surprise he's got to where he's at. But when I start thinking about that bank collapse that they were talking about in that last little video, somewhere around 1933, the Great Depression and all that, and I'm like, well, what was going on right before 1933? I know there was a famine and there was another world war, so, a lot of stuff, Europe related, maybe money that goes back to England still, because the Civil War wasn't necessarily just Americans fighting America. I mean, it was, but they didn't have the money for the ammunition, so they were borrowing money from France and Poland and Germany and England. So England was still furnishing the American colonies after the American Revolution. So I had this sneaky idea that, what if Britain set that whole Civil War thing up through the banks back then to crash the American economy around the 30s so they could come in and snatch up all those loans and basically buy up the American people with them birth certificates that they started issued in 1933 around the same time when the banks collapsed. I don't know. We say we want our independence and we want our freedom, but we sure did have a price for it one time, didn't we? And I think that's really disrespectful if you think about what the people went through to fight that war. And I mean, you can say who's right and who's wrong and, you know, who was on which side, but the world was a better place for a little while. It only recently started to suck again for the people who thought they were doing it to make things better. It's like watching everything you built just crumble before your eyes. It's hard, but that's why we got companies like BlackRock and Halliburton, because we always got to rebuild, you know. Can't rebuild unless there's something that just got destroyed. Might be out of business. I hope they fix it soon. Y'all stay good. Peace.